Hello and welcome aboard, shipmates, to my review of Rogue Ship by A. Van Vogt, based on short stories that in part date back to 1947. This is a collection that was rewritten to form a single coherent novel that hit the US in 1965, landing here in the UK 2 years later. The rogue ship of the title is the hope of mankind, launched to explore distant stars as rumours that our sun is about to expire circulate. The hope is expected to achieve near light speed thanks to theoretical concepts that turn out to be not quite as accurate as hoped. The journey, expected to take a few years, ends up being multi-generational. The story begins with the ship underway, the sun quite literally a dot in the rearview mirror, and Lesbee, the son of the captain, meeting with Ganneret, who is there to distract him while others attempt a coup. Lesbee is the son of the current captain, and Ganneret and his supporters will install him as the captain should they succeed. All they need is Lesbee's silence until they've achieved their takeover. The captain, the officers and their families have taken on a position as the ruling caste, hence Lesbee's position, albeit unwillingly, in the future government. Ganneret and his people are the ship's workers, unhappy with the mission. They are 8 years' travel from their destination, 20 out from Earth, but determined to turn the ship and return home. Lesbee is torn, considering returning to be the right thing to do, yet knowing silence will see his father and friends killed. Yet as time passes and there is no news from Ganneret's conspirators, it is obvious that the coup has been foiled. Lesbee's father is something of a despot, determined to pursue the mission at all costs, even the cost of friendships, relationships, and the lives of those opposed to him. As the hope of man approaches Centaurus, there is another threat to the ship, this time from those on board who'd abandoned Earth and set up a colony there. The concept is scuppered by the discovery that the planet is already inhabited and that the atmosphere will not support human life. This is true of much of the system, though by now it's clear that the captain of the ship, Lesbee IV, who has ruthlessly dispatched his own father to seize power, would not give up control over the ship or its crew anyway. In less than 40 pages, Van Vogt has gone through 2 coups and 3 generations of the Lesbee family. As Ganneret discovers when he's executed without time to discuss the case with his lawyer, there isn't a lot of time spent dawdling. Van Vogt is of a similar generation and is regularly compared with Robert Heinlein, and Rogue Ship has that same vibrant, lived-in feel as Heinlein's universe, Time for the Stars, and especially in the second half of the book, The Man Who Sold the Moon. Van Vogt's reputation was for an electric pace, and this is no exception. It is an absolutely breathless beginning, and in that regard, up there with the best of early Heinlein. Our latest Lesbee, while having some of the practicality of a Heinlein figure and leans on his grandfather as a reluctant mentor, lacks any kind of morals, even firing a nuclear missile into an alien atmosphere in order to set the right tone ahead of negotiations. It is a great shame that his reign lasts a scant 10 pages before he too is violently deposed in favour of Captain Brown, who has scarcely finished exchanging information with the local aliens before he too is disposed. If you were unfortunate enough to own a book of Van Vogt's that was missing a page, there's a real danger you would miss something significant, or perhaps even a couple of things. But the loss of Lesbee IV to the novel is akin to the loss of Joffrey to Game of Thrones. A perfectly hissable villain is difficult to replace, and the new Captain Gordy is not as much fun, though just as ruthless and determined that the dynastic power hierarchy should continue. His short command will be ended by his eventual replacement, Captain Gordy, but aboard the ship there remains a Lesbee Generation 5 who grows up in the shadow of his name, the name of a captain in a society enthralled to the idea of dynasty. As such, keeping his head off the chopping block is his primary motivation, yet he is his father's son and simmers with the need to reclaim his birthright. However, finding an inhabited planet and making contact with their robot proxies, who intend themselves to take over the hope of man, affords Lesbee the opportunity to leverage them for a co-captaincy. It is short-lived, as you'd imagine, as the robot escapes and continues to threaten the ship. Brown attempts to kill Lesbee, but fails, and Lesbee V's sole leadership is not even confirmed before Gordy leads a successful revolt and becomes the new captain. If you're wondering, Van Vogt, unwilling to pause for breath, is still not as far as page 100. But Gordy, even though he is a man from the working classes, is no less determined his family should lead when he's dead and gone, which surely can only be a matter of minutes. However, because of his background, he does not have the knowledge required to carry out his plan to return to Earth, the first of our many captains to seriously consider that option. As such, he's forced to lean heavily on Lesbee, who is a technician, to control the drives that can now get them home far closer to the speed of light. Lesbee recognises the problem that Geordie, having murdered his rivals to claim power, will probably not be able to return to Earth without answering for that crime. It's a shame in his mad rush that Van Vogt doesn't also consider the idea that Geordie is a largely unskilled man, but the ship's ultimate sovereign, the alpha male able to pick and choose from the ship's women. On Earth, he'll just be one labourer of many. Quite the come down. It seems a shame that in a novel so concerned with the lure and trappings of power that he doesn't explore that. However, the key part of Van Vogt's message is the cyclical nature of mankind, fated to repeat over and over, the squabbles between factions, to seize and lose power. When Lesbee crashes the ship through the light barrier and takes the Hope back home, Van Vogt still has reached page 110. Part of this pace comes from the source material. Rogue Ship is pieced together from a number of short stories, but part of it is Van Vogt's style. In his autobiography, he said he liked to introduce a new concept or problem every 800 words. And that is something of a strength and a weakness. Lesbee V's plotting is not as brilliantly wicked as Lesbee IV's scheming. The science, such a big part of the early Heinlein novels, and these shorts were written as far back as the 1940s, is treated the same way. What that means is there's verisimilitude to them, but they lack the conviction of Heinlein. However, I am on record on this very channel as saying that there are times Heinlein might have kept his story moving a bit quicker, but Van Vogt clearly does not have that problem. He relates the scientific background of Lesbee's faster-than-light travel so fast it is, if anything, confusing. This is what lends the second half of the book, where Van Vogt leans most heavily on The Man Who Sold the Moon, its energy. Lesbee continues to plot away, but it is the zany concept of parts of the galaxy and the ship moving at different times that drives the story here. As such, the pace drops away ever so slightly. The Hope of Man arrives back in the solar system a mere 8 years after its departure, despite the many generations that have occurred on board. Avril Hewitt, the ship's owner, is keen to find out what has gone on, not just because he believes the sun is about to die, but because he funded the ship's journey to Centaurus. Hewitt leverages his wealth and power to board and explore the ship. However, when Lesbee drops the ship beneath light speed, he's trapped on board. He, of course, seizes power for himself, but has a degree of support from the people after announcing a new manifesto they can apparently all get behind. Van Vogt is characteristically vague about what exactly he is promising, beyond codifying laws, universal education, and that outside force and technology, scientifically altruistic, could move in upon such a limited world as the Hope of Man and in a short time create a model system. Though there is no evidence Lesbee has read any history or even recent news, he is unconvinced that dispassionate technology, meting out zeros and ones for humans' value, is going to create a utopia. He makes a play for power, but Geordie's return is rather more violent. Hewitt has ruthless men behind him that support his leadership, but seem beyond his control, and though at last he is in sole power and commanding broad support, he remains the dictator aboard, just like all the others. As such, the question remains whether Van Vogt, in showing that altruistic science, and I suspect even Darwin would call that a misnomer, is the beginning of a new epoch for man, the beginning of a cooperative of understanding, that is a recurring concept in Van Vogt's work, or whether his inability to control the more ruthless figures that maintain his power will return the Hope to the same cyclical nature as before. James Blish, writing before this novel was published but after at least 2 of the shorts that it is based on, said that Van Vogt never gets to grip with an idea, just piles more on top of it. This would be in keeping with Van Vogt's own words, as mentioned, of introducing a new thing every 800 words, but with Philip K. Dick's work exploring similar ideas in the same time as Rogue Ship, I prefer to think that Van Vogt is leaving a little room for doubt, as Dick himself used to. Because if I'm right, Rogue Ship isn't just hugely entertaining, it comes close to the best science fiction of the era. If I'm wrong, it's just hugely entertaining and well worth your time. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more of this sort of thing.